At the very beginning of Eranos, Jung once appeared for dinner, pointed out the round table and said, "This is the true Eranos." Jung talked about all the topics he could, and the young psychologist participated there with special interest. Mrs. Fröbe wrote that these informal discussions, to which Erich Neumann, since the late 1940s, contributed to, were almost more important than the lectures themselves, and that it was too bad that the words were never taken down. Another particular moment at Eranos was the so-called terrace wall session, which, as still Aniela Jaffe recalled, took place as follows. During the intermissions and after the lectures, Jung would perch on the little wall of the terrace, and immediately participants and pupils would gather around him like a cluster of grapes. Jung would discuss each lecture psychologically, and every question, however short and simple, received a rich response. End of quotation. Jung's interest in the phenomenology of religions is the point where his work encountered those of the other scholars whom he had the chance to meet at Eranos. The conferences wound up becoming the most important interdisciplinary meeting point between Jung and many other scholars on the topic of the archetypal structures underlying religious phenomena. Jung appeared as a speaker at Eranos for the first time in 1933. He gave a total of 14 talks up to 1951, included in the Eranos yearbooks and later in his collected works, and a seminar, which was only recently brought to publication. Jung participated for the last time at Eranos in 1952, only as a listener. It was at Eranos, in the living room of Gabriella House, that the Baldingen Foundation was founded in the early 1940s. It was there that the contracts for the American, English and German editions of the collected works were drawn up in 1947. It was there, in 1956, that the project for Jung's Memories, Dreams, Reflections became a reality. In all the talks that Jung gave at Eranos, we can always observe a solid reference to his clinical experience, from which he deduced the fundamental principle of his psychological theory. Neumann was the first analytical psychology to speak at Eranos after Jung. Jung in some cases personally invited Neumann to lecture there, with aim to hear his own experiences in the field of medical psychology. In other cases, Jung interceded with the federal immigration authorities in Bern, Switzerland, for granting Erich Neumann and his wife, Julie Blumenfeld Neumann, the entry visa to allow them to take part in the conferences. Neumann lectured at Eranos usually as the keynote speaker, as William Maguire remarks. He preferred to speak as the first lecturer to free himself from the tension connected with the public engagement. Neumann had a large circle of followers in Ascona, as he always touched on points of central interest in his speeches. As Jimena de Angulo Rowley reports, for example, his 1950 lecture on the psychological meaning of right was one of the highest moments of that year's conference. He also regretted that not more young people were there to benefit from his talk. What made his speeches so interesting, Hans Thomas Haeckel notes, is that he always made a connection to our spiritual problems in the present day and did not simply hold forth in an abstract way about distant cultures. Neumann thus became soon one of the most important figures at Eranos, according to Gerard Adler, if not the dominant one, as William Maguire believes. So, together with organizing the conferences, iconographical research became Mrs. Fröbe's main enterprise for about 10 years. She was thus able to obtain a large number of photographic reproductions of symbolical representations from Eastern and Western iconographic traditions, alchemy, folklore, mythology, and religions, as well as contemporary archetypal representations, and to catalogue them on the basis of their archetypal themes. In 1938, while engaged in a research of images on the Great Mother, she had an intense inner experience, which she described as a descent into hell. These visions had revealed to her the maternal aspect of hell in the form of a cave covered by black breasts from which milk flowed. In the same year, she spent a period of time in Athens, Crete, and then in Rome. Before moving to Berlin, she wrote to Mary Mellon, "I feel if I were going into the unknown, because this cruise into the territory of the Great Mother, the Magna Mater, where all her cults were alive, is a different thing from getting her images from their northern museums. I'm going to collect every archetypal representation I can find." She also reported to Mary Mellon that in Crete she had the greatest experience of her life. She wrote the same to her friend Carrie Baines, to whom she explained that some psychosomatic symptoms she had suffered from during her trip were connected with her identification with the Great Mother. While looking for archaeological traces on that myth, she had become completely inflated by it. In Knossos Palace, where a serpent god was worshipped, she saw herself as an island of ancient traditions. This trip into the realm of the Great Mother was so intense that she had to ask for Jung's help, as she often did in those years. She wrote to him that she wasn't able to free herself anymore from the mythological net in which she was trapped.